Okay, welcome everybody. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law, chapter 53, and we're up to number 3. All right. Let's let someone in. Heiros sheshroim or bishlam rak bishvil aroitiv. Okay. So last time we were discussing different fruits or something that we cooked, and we either we wanted the fruit, but then it had some type of broth or juice, like, or sometimes you cook for both, like a compote, you want the whole sort of mix. Here, chapter 53, number 3, we're discussing something you only cook it for the liquid. Mavarch alav shehakol. So on that, you're always going to make shehakol. So what do we cook? Only for the liquid. So we're going to give examples. L'chein, and therefore, mavarchin al kafe val teh, on coffee and tea. Right? They go on trees. The coffee bean, it's a fruit, but we're only cooking it. No one has the bean. As a matter of fact, you filter it out, right? If we have a proper, get instant coffee that dissolves, but if a person has a proper machine, the percolating, the brewing the coffee, you filter out the actual substance of what's been cooked. The same with tea. No one ever drinks the tea leaves. Right? When the bag breaks or something, tea leaves get in your tea. It's undesirable, right? It's purely for the liquid, right? That has the taste. And I'll sip my tea just in commemoration of the idea. All right. So we say shehakol. V'chein al hashecha. Likewise, beer. Even though beer, we're making it with barley and hops and different things. So barley is, well, if you eat whole barley, it's adoma. If you eat made into something, it's mazonis. But here, it's cooked with the. So this beer, bein shul mitmorim, whether it's a date beer, right? It's made from dates, bein shul misoirim, or whether it's a barley beer. Still, we're going to say shehakol because it's made, even though it's cooked in different things, it's purely for the beverage and not for the substance. So that's number 3. Number 4. Yirakos or peiros shekoshin oisim mishim mechamsu. You have fruit or vegetables that are soaked in salt water. In other words, we pickle them. You pickle them. Now, even though this is the norm, right? Certain vegetables you generally pickle. We don't only pickle cucumbers. Sometimes we'll eat different cucumbers. Where it says kagoin gherkins for the like ukra is a different type of cucumbers, or rota is rhubarb, ribbon is different types of goods. Svikal barkas kroit, right? Then you have and the ribbon is the beans, and you have beets or cabbage, different things like this. So many of them, you pickle them. That's the norm, especially in olden times. We weren't able to import food from around the world, if it wasn't in season. So when it came into season, for a few weeks you ate some fresh produce, but otherwise you pickled everything. And especially in Europe, sauerkraut was one of the staples. Right? People would preserve and keep it the whole year. So the vegetable is one story. Now we're talking about the liquid. Nevertheless, we only say shehakol on the liquid. I don't usually pour myself a nice glass of pickle water out of the pickle cans, but I know there are some people that do, and I even saw one once we bought it once. Even it was in the store. They had ices, like icy pulse, pickle juice. It was the water from pickles, and although I wasn't suspecting it was going to be particularly dessertish, like ices usually are, but we had to try it once. Something unusual came out, and okay, we tried it once. I don't think we ever got it again. It wasn't that exciting. But some people like it, right? Some people like to have it. So if they do take a drink, they're going to say shahakal. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah,
I think this is how Gatorade was invented. That there were everybody was sweating a lot in this football game, and the coach he thought that maybe if they drink pickle juice, it'll help them. And the one team drank the pickle juice, and the other team didn't. And it was a hot. I think it was the Florida Gators. It was in Florida, and the visiting team didn't drink the pickle juice, and everybody cramped up. And the home team, the Florida Gators from the University of Florida, they drank the pickle juice. Nobody had any leg cramps or anything like that. So and from that, they eventually invented Gatorade.
okay. So there we go. So medicinal purposes, even if it's not refreshing, can help, right? So the kiddush, the unique thing about the liquid that shahakal is even though it has the flavor of the vegetables and the fruit. Even though it has the flavoring, nevertheless, it's still shahakal. Um, okay. Um, that's the thing. Become mocker nevertheless. Hoil ve'ene ika kvisha b'shil shidno tam b'mayim. Since the purpose of the pickling was not to give the flavor to the liquid, that wasn't the purpose of the pickling. The purpose of the pickling was for the vegetable. Haima ba'atzum yisaknu oide kvishim. Right? The purpose was sorry, the purpose was so the vegetables should become improved through soaking, through being in this pickle mix, right? So since that was the purpose, not to create the liquid, the shahakal. Therefore, shahakal is on the liquid. All right. Next point. Therefore we say shakel. Nevertheless, if you first ate the vegetable, all right, so you had some sauerkraut, let's say, or pickles, or varech brei priyadama, and you made brei priyadama on the vegetable that was pickled in this mixed. And afterwards, you also want to drink some of the liquid. So now there's a doubt. There's a question, do you have to make a bracha on the liquid or not? Because maybe since he was having both, maybe he exempted the liquid with the brei priyadama. Therefore, you should avoid this. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. So if a person is going to is planning on drinking it, should make some shakal on it first, drink it first, um, or don't have it at the same time, drink it later. Okay. Number 5. Okay. Similarly, fruit, vegetables, legumes, and the like. Shabishlam b'mashka, that you cooked in a liquid. So you boiled them or whatever, some type of liquid you cooked it in. Sheyesh lo tom b'atzmuso, that the liquid has its own flavor. Good going, for example, b'chaimitz or borscht or b'cholov. You cook them in vinegar or in borscht or in milk. You make shehakal on the liquid. But if you first ate the solid food and said the bracha, either hate, sadam, or whatever food it was, so it puts us into the same doubt. Yesh safik im einaroitiv nita b'bracha. Then there's a doubt whether he needs to make another bracha. Similarly, would be uh well, not the doubt situation, but the liquid. We'll go to number 6. We'll come back. Number 6. We're going to discuss making a wine out of raisins. Right, it's a low quality wine. They soaked. Right, so some states in Australia had a similar laws to like prohibition in America. Similar period, drop later, and okay. I mean, you didn't really have the gangsters and stuff in Australia like you had in America during prohibition, but it did create small problems when it came to kiddush. And so what some people used to do was they would make this raisin wine that we're going to discuss, because it was easy to to buy large quantities of raisins and different things. And they made them. And I knew an elderly lady who, when she was a child, her and her brother used to deliver it, on the little baskets on their bikes. They used to go riding, and no one suspected little kids, uh, of delivering. They used to deliver the kiddush wine made from raisins in the under their parents' house. So number 6, we're going to discuss these raisins. Samukim sheishmim lachlukas kolkach. Now raisins that have enough moisture, so they're not totally dried. That if you would crush them, they're honey, so to speak, honey in quotation marks, and it's like some type of thick. It's not really juice; it's thicker. So these ones, if you crush them and soak them in water, then it makes a certain wine. So the sarich shtia, if you do it for the purpose of drinking, and not for the purpose of eating the raisins, because maybe you're going to crush it and soak it because you want to make some type of paste out of the raisins, or in a cake, so you plan to eat it. So we're not talking about that. You're doing it for the purpose of drinking. So im if they were soaked for 3 days and then they start bubbling, so in other words, the fermentation has started and starts to bubble. That's approximately takes 3 days. And then after another 3 days, you pour this juice, this liquid, into a different utensil. Then harimashka zoi yain gomer. This liquid is halachically has the exact same laws as wine. It's a lower quality. It's not as tasty, but when it comes, so it's not nice table wine, but halachically it's a wine. And before we drink it, we say the bracha brei gofen. And after we drink it, bracha mein shalosh. We say the bracha that we normally make after wine. And any time halachically we need wine, so kiddush, havdalah, pesach, a wedding, any time that we need a glass of wine, yoitzim boy, we can fulfill our obligation with this raisin wine. Okay. So that's the first thing. That's the introduction. That's how it works. Next step. You have to make sure that the raisins are more than 1/6 of the water. So you want to have, like, let's say, for example, a 1:5. Well, more, because if you had 5 cups of water and 1 cup of raisins, then that is the 6. It's a 6. So you want to have more than the 6. So you might have 1 cup of raisins, 4.5 cups of water, something like that. No, so it has to be. We don't want raisin flavored water. We want it to really be enough grape substance, raisin substance, that'll actually be wine. So that's your recipe. Now, masharim esam mitzukim. Now, when you work this out, to be more than a 6, you look at the volume of the raisins. The chusam kodim yabshu. Now, it was the size that they would have been when they were moist before they were dried. Okay, so that's how you work it out. Now, the davka shnase de shiria. This only becomes wine when it's made through soaking. As we explained above, you soak it for 3 days, it starts fermenting, then you let it ferment for 3 days, and then you drain off the liquid. But if you cooked the raisin in water, it does not become wine through cooking. That process doesn't work. It might have the taste of the raisins, but it does not become wine. The im shara or bish, it just mentions in the brackets that in the Chaya Adam he says differently. Right? The Chaya Adam he says it would. He says you can't cook the raisins, you strain it and you can use it for kiddush. The Chaya Adam is it used to be very popular. It used to be very popular. Um uh, he wrote the Chaya Adam on these laws things, and the Chachmas Adam on the other section Shulchan Aruch. Anyway, so he rules differently to the Kiddush Shulchan Aruch. He says the cooking works. I think if Chas v'Shalom we had another situation with a prohibition, different things like that, you could rely on the Chaya Adam if you had to, if that was the only way you could get some wine. But we'll say in the first instance, better to avoid it. Now, if you soaked or cooked the raisins, with the intention of eating the raisins. So not only do you want to drink the juice, you want to eat it, and you want to cook them. You like cooked raisins. Yes, this creates a tremendous amount of issue as to whether what bracha we make, and in main Shulchan Aruch there's a long discussion. So if you end up cooking raisins, I don't know how many people cook raisins with the intention to eat the cooked raisins and drink the drink. If you ever do, no, you should ask a rabbi first. Okay. So Siman Nun Dalet.
Is there such
Yeah,
a
sorry.
thing as kosher raisin wine?
Well, it'd be the same as any other wine, if you make it especially. But
I mean,
because it's not
not that I don't mean homemade. I'm talking about commercial.
I haven't seen it. I wouldn't be surprised if someone makes it somewhere. But it's because it's a poor quality. I mean, I haven't tasted it myself, but I'm told it's a poor quality. It's very thick. It's not so tasty. So people, it's something they used to do in Europe, Eastern Europe, when they were very poor, and it was something that people did in Prohibition times. Different things, so it was easier to get away with it. So it's in Kitzur I guess, because also the Jews of Eastern Europe, they were poor. and hopefully we don't have to deal with prohibition. So we're going to discuss in chapter 54 Ikka and Toffel, meaning the main thing and a secondary thing. So an example of this, just give an example would be, let's say, an ice cream in a cone. Now, often the cones are also shahakal anyway, with what they're made. But okay, and there are very fancy cones that maybe when a person eats ice cream, it's these fancy waffle sugar cones, and he's also eating for the cones as much as the ice cream. So let's leave that aside. Let's just keep it simple. The cheap basic ice cream cones. And it could be, if someone ate it, could be it's mazonis. I mean, it depends how they made it, but it could be it's a mazonis. But this person, he's packed the ice cream. It's got a soft serve, it goes all the way through, and he really has no interest in eating the cone in of itself. His intent here is eating the ice cream. Happens to be the cone contains the ice cream, and so he eats it together with the ice cream. But the primary intent is the ice cream. So in which case, a bracha on the ice cream is going to fulfill the requirement for the cone as well. That's an example, just as an introduction. But we're going to discuss the parameters. When exactly do we say that one thing is the main thing, one thing is another thing, and therefore bracha. So the most basic example, of course, is bread. Bread fills the requirement of the entire meal because it's the staple of the meal. So we consider it the main food. But other situations. So another example, if you had we already mentioned bread, but let's say you had a hot dog with a mazonis bun instead of hamotzi. So then probably the mazonis is the main thing. That's what fills the person up. The hot dog is for the flavor more than the. All right, we're gonna go through it. Simon
Yes.
nun dalid. Yeah.
Most ice cream places, the regular cones, there's the general standard cones
Yeah.
probably account for about 95% of the cones. But the other cones that they sell are like, I forget what they're called. They're sort of a higher quality cone.
The waffle and sugar cones they
Wow,
call,
yeah, right,
waffle.
right,
Yeah, that might
right.
be different. A person might be wanting also the cone, so it might be equal
Oh,
significance. That's why I specifically said not the fancy cones, just a regular plain cone. Um, when a person orders the fancy one, it shows that they want the fancy. They want to eat the cone as well. But it's those kinds of things. Um, excuse me. Yeah, same would be cereal. Someone has a cereal with milk. So the main purpose, look, I mean, everyone's different. Some people have basically milk with just a little few bits of cereal to give it a bit of substance. But most people, it's cereal that you put some milk into. So a brach on the cereal, now sometimes the cereal is also shahakal, depends what cereal it is. But it could be it's a cereal with a different bracha. And being that it's the main thing, that's what you're eating, the the milk is just to make the cereal more pleasant and edible. Then you only make a bracha on the cereal. You don't make a separate bracha on the milk. Okay, so it's din ikka v'toffel. This is the din of ikka. We call it the main, the primary food, and a toffel means secondary. Okay. Im achal shnei dvarim. Person eats two things. Or oichel v'shoisa, or he's eating and drinking. Ve'echad ikka etzloi. One of them is the primary, is the main food. The sheni hu tofeloi, and the other one is secondary. It's like subordinate to the first food. She'ain kavanos la'achloi, in a way, meaning what does secondary mean? It's not just I had meat and potatoes, and the meat was the main thing, the potato was a side dish. It's not what we mean. What we mean is my purpose, my intention is not really to eat the secondary food. I'm only having it because for the sake of the main food. So again, classic example, the ice cream cone or the milk in the cereal. Vim lo haya ika, and if I did not have the main food, lo haya oichel klal I wouldn't eat the other one at all. If I didn't have an ice cream, why would I eat this cone? There's no reason for it. Meat and potatoes, well, I might eat the potatoes. Baked potatoes are a good snack, right? So them I could eat. But the basic cones, why would I eat it? Keep going. So he's going to give an example. Halish Liboy, he felt weak. Kudei lahazik Liboy, in order to get back some strength, what did he do? He eats salted fish, in other words, herring, or salted radish. Because it's very sharp, herring is very tasty, but he doesn't want to eat the herring. He doesn't want to eat the herring straight. He has a little bit of bread or something else. To take away the sharpness. Now, I want to clarify here because I don't want people to get confused. Normally, when we have herring, so let's just talk about a kiddush on Shabbos. Kiddush on Shabbos. And we're going to have, let's say, there's crackers and there's herring. So we eat the crackers with the herring. Now, even possibly the main thing is the herring, but you also want the cracker. In other words, we're having a meal now. We want to fill ourselves up, and it's the cracker that's filling, right? The herring gives the taste, but the cracker is what is giving me my meal or the challah, whatever it is. So we really want both. That is that situation, and therefore we make a bracha on both. Well, not if we make on bread, we just make on the bread. But let's say we're on crackers and herring at the kiddush, we would make a bracha on the cracker, and afterwards a bracha on the herring, because we're having both as sort of a meal. Okay, welcome those who joined us. We just started chapter 54. However, the situation we're describing here is different. I'm not after a meal. I'm feeling a bit energyless, a little bit weak, and I just want some herring to pick me up, not as a meal. And since the herring is very strong, I take a cracker or a piece of bread or something so it's not such a strong flavor in my mouth, just so it can be palatable. So I really have no interest in eating the bread or the cracker at all in respect to my eating. It's just purely for the sake of uh, toning down the sharpness of the herring. Again, as opposed to when I eat it at a kiddush or something, I really want a little bit of a meal, and therefore I want to eat the crackers as much as I want to eat the herring. So we're talking about this situation. We are not talking about where you want it as the meal. We're talking about a situation now where you only want a little bit of herring just to perk you up. You're feeling a little bit weak, and this cracker or bread, whatever you're eating with the herring, you don't want to eat it. It's purely to minimize the sharpness of the herring. So then it becomes secondary. And he's giving another example. You wanted to drink a liquor, right? A whiskey. You drink it. And because you're drinking, sometimes, especially if it's not a smooth one, it's quite strong. You have some moonshine. You have a little bit of bread or a fruit or a little something afterwards, just to take the burning sensation away. Then mavarach rakalik. In such a case, you only make a bracha on the main food, the herring or the liquor, whatever it is. And on the secondary food, you don't make a blessing because you're not eating it for its own sake. It's only being consumed as an assistance to the main food. So, and when we say you don't make a bracha on it, loy lafanov, we don't make a bracha before eating it, because we already made the bracha on the main food. Obviously, you have to say a bracha, but we mean is the bracha we make on the main food, our primary food that we want to eat, fulfills its bracha. We don't have to make a separate bracha on it. Loy la'acharav or afterwards. Why? Ki nifta bracha shal ikka, it becomes exempted on with the blessing that we use on the main food. And not only that, even if you took a piece of bread to tone down the sharpness of this herring, you don't even need to wash your hands for bread. Okay. Now let's give some parameters to that, some caveats, because it doesn't always apply. Now, Vidavka, number 2, Vidavka, this is only this rule that you don't make a bracha on this bread or even need to wash. This is only you eat the main food first. Is a toffel, and then there's some subordinate one, right? So in other words, you have some herring, and it was very sharp, or you took, you wanted to eat chilies, jalapeno, and you put the jalapeno in your mouth, it's burning your mouth, so you put in a little bit of bread just to take out the burn. That's when the bread was exempted with the blessing you made on the jalapeno. But if the other way around, if you had the bread first, well then it's a different case. So that's condition number 1. You have to eat the primary food that you want to eat first. Condition number 2. When you made a brach on the main food, the jalapeno, or the ice cream, or the herring, or whatever happens to be, you had in mind the other thing. So when you made a brach on the ice cream, you had in mind the brach is going on the cone. When you ate the jalapeno and you made hadam on it, you had in mind you're going to take a little crack, a little bit of bread to take the burn out of your mouth, or the herring. So either you have to have specifically in mind, or shuragel bekach, or if that's what you normally do, then it's like you had it in mind, if that's what you always do. So condition number 1 is you have to have the primary food first. Condition number 2 is you have to have the secondary food in mind when you made a bracha on the primary food. Now condition number 3. You have to eat the secondary food at the same time. Meaning, if we gave the case of the jalapeno, when it's burning your mouth and you take a little bit of bread just to take the burn out. So it's right afterwards you take it. Not that then after the jalapeno you had some cheesecake, and then you had a little drink of water, and then you had some bread. It has to be right after the other. This excludes im halach min time if you want another room in the interim. So if we don't have all 3 of these conditions, then you're going to have to make a bracha on the subordinate, the secondary food as well. Okay. Number 3. Okay. We're continuing to discuss this idea. And likewise, if you ate the secondary food first, so we did not do the first condition, we ate the secondary food first, and then you ate the main food. He's giving an example. You want to drink some alcohol, and what happens is you don't want to drink on an empty stomach. So, in order not to drink on an empty stomach, I mean, a liberekana literally means an empty heart, but you don't drink an empty stomach; it's going to be too small. So you eat something small first. So you're only eating; you're not hungry now. You're eating something in order to be able to drink. So so you need to make a blessing before you eat the secondary food. a before blessing, that you have to make because you're eating it first. So he has some, he says, I don't know, let's say he ate some nuts. So he says at 8, he eats the nuts, a few nuts, and then he drinks his drink. So he made a before blessing. Amnon, nevertheless, Kivan shurak tafel ato, since the food was only a secondary, was for the purpose, he wasn't eating it for its own sake, it was only for the purpose of the main food. Yesh oimrim the yared birchasoi, some say that it goes down a bracha, right? So if we gave the example of nuts, instead of saying ha'etz, you would only say shahakol on the nuts because he's not eating the nuts for the sake of eating nuts. He's eating nuts to drink whiskey. V'yesh cholkin, and then there are those who disagree with this and say, no, at the end of the day, you're eating nuts, so you need to say ha'etz. So because we're in this halachic quandary, what do? The heights is so in order to get yourself out of a doubtful thing, because you don't want to say Hashem's name for no reason, and saying the wrong bracha is like saying no bracha. So you're going to say Hashem's name. If it's the wrong bracha, it'll be Hashem's name for no reason. What should you do? Drink a little bit of the main food. So even though you're eating nuts, as an example, because you don't want to drink on empty stomach, first make shahakal on the whiskey. Have a small sip at least. Then eat the nuts. B'yivarachalov, lift a satafel, and when you make a bracha on the liquor, you have in mind that you also, whatever food you're having to settle the stomach, you're having that in mind as well. Okay. So till now, the first three we discussed, the second food is totally subordinate. It's totally secondary. In other words, I'm eating ice cream. Yeah, it comes in a cone, and that's how you hold it, because you can't put ice cream in your hand and eat it. Although I have seen kids try, right? Stick their hands in the ice cream container and take some. But civilized adults don't eat ice cream like that. You put it in the cone and you eat it with the cone. So the only reason I'm having the cone is purely for the ice cream. So it's totally subordinate, it's secondary. That's that. But what if I want both of them? So as I've mentioned before, instead of the regular cone, I got one of these big fancy waffle sugar cones that are really delicious. And so I actually want the experience of eating the the ice cream and the fancy cone. That's why I ordered the fancier cone. Paid extra for it because I want to eat that too. So one might be a little bit secondary, but still my intention is to eat both and not just the one. So what's the law then? Let's look at number 4. In kavanoso l'shneim, my intention is both of them. I want both foods. Kigoin is giving an example. Shusaisa yain saraf gamine kinsim. He's drinking liquor, right? Whiskey. You can tell this is written in Eastern Europe, the Sefer. You know, and he's having a Danish. He's having some Zionist, right? If this was written modern day America, it would be he's having a coffee and a Danish. But it's Eastern Europe, so he's having his whiskey and and a Danish, a pastry. Over to shonim or little honey cakes, or makachas gedoima, little preserves, little nice things, little side dishes, right? So it's the kiddush, kedom the like. So now yes, he might, if he was only drinking, he might want to eat something so he doesn't drink empty stomach. But now it's kiddush after davening. It doesn't have to be kiddush. I'm just using an example. And so he's a little hungry, and he wants to eat the pastries because he's hungry. And he wants to have the cake because he wants to eat cake, as well as it benefiting his drinking. So if that's the case, now he has to make a bracha on both of them. You have to make two brachas, one on the pastry and one on the whiskey. Bevarach techila al kinsin oila markachas. First, you make it on the pastry or the preserve. Why? Shem chashuvim, because they are more significant. A mazoinus is, or whatever happens to me, is more significant than a drink. And then he makes a bracha on the whiskey, on the liquor. Mikol mokim, nevertheless. Sorry, Mikol shekain im oichel baskinsim, and how much more so if he's eating pastries? L'shoyse ken kafir, and he's also having a coffee with his pastry. He has to make a bracha on both of them. Al paskinsim, when we say yes to have a bracha, means both the bracha before, so he has to say mezainis, v'achekach ala coffee, and afterwards he makes a bracha on the coffee, shekavanos l'shneim, because his intention is to consume both. So it's two separate things without one being secondary to the other. So we've discussed two separate foods that were made separately, are separate, and in one situation, one was totally subordinate and secondary, and in the second situation, we wanted both. But they're separate foods. What happens if you cook a food together? So you take two foods, and they become one type of food. So how does it work then? That's what we're going to discuss in number 5. Shnei minim shnisbashel yachad. You had two different types of foods that were cooked together. So it's going to depend, as we're going to see over the next discussion. Are they distinguishable? Like, can you tell you cooked together? So you baked meat and potatoes in the same pan. So even though they're cooked together, you can see here's the meat and here's the potatoes. So that's one situation. Then you have something you cook it became like a like a let's say think pumpkin soup or something. It's like one mush or even some type of pie, something inside, but you don't really see it at least when it's closed. So so there could be a different situation. So let's have a look. Two types of food were cooked together. So im kol min muvdul atzmoi, if each type of food is separate and distinguishable in the mixture, mevarach al kol min b'fnei atzmoi bracha roim loy. Then you make a bracha on each food its own blessing. So let's say you had a vegetable soup with big chunks of vegetables, and it had mushrooms and barley and whatever it is. Well, let's say a mushroom barley soup, right? So you got clear, visible barley, clear, visible mushrooms, and there's a nice amount of each one. So he makes dom on the barley, because it's the whole grains. It didn't become mush like a mazonis. And he makes a shahakol on the mushroom. And maybe there was whatever, or he had as an example. So you make each one its own blessing, because they're distinguishable and they're separate. Pavel, however, im nismachu mistabku, they were mashed and stuck together. Then azayis linam basaruba. Now we go after the majority. Because what's the majority is the main thing. Mavarach malav, and we make the blessing on that. Vashani nifter, and the second one becomes exempted. So let's give an example. He took eggplant, and he made baba ganoush. So he mixes in, I don't know, what's he put in? Mayonnaise, whatever he puts in. The other food. So it's all one mush, but what's the primary food? Is the eggplant, and there's still some chunks. If it's become a total mush, maybe it's a shahakal. But here, there's still some chunks of the eggplant, still a little bit chunky. But the other ingredients are all mixed in. They're not distinguishable. They're not separate. So he's just going to make a bracha on it, and the other things become exempted. So welcome those who join us. We're in chapter 54. We're towards the end of number 5. However, if one of the foods is the 5 species of grain, then afa pishel miut, even if it's the minority, hu ha'ika, it becomes the primary one. So example of this might be a chocolate-coated wafer. Even though it may potentially have more chocolate than wafer, it's possible. But since now not all the wafers are actually really made out of grain or have much grain in it in the chocolates. A lot of them is just it's a sugar type of wafer. But if it was a proper cookie type wafer, so but it's even if you had more chocolate, so it would still be Mazonis. So that would be an exception to the rule. Okay. Number 6. Okay, we're still talking about these mixtures that are cooked together. I'm going to give another variation. You have food which you mixed milk or broth in order to eat them together. Excuse me. If the primary intent is to eat the solid food, then you only make the bracha on it. And the milk or the broth is secondary and is therefore exempt from the blessing. So you had porridge and you put in a little bit of milk, or you had a cold cereal, and it's okay. Some cereal is shahakal also, but it was a mazinah cereal or whatever it happens to be, and you're not putting so much milk. Some people put in a lot of milk so they get to drink it afterwards, but it's just a little bit of milk in the cereal to make it nicer, or you put a ketchup on a food, right? So you're not eating it for the ketchup's sake. It's just it's for the sake anyway. So you make a bracha on the solid food, and that exempts the liquid. The im kavonaso rak al marak v'chalav. However, let's say his intent was only for the broth of the milk, right? So now he's having chocolate milk, and he puts in some something else, something like make a little crunchy or something. I don't know, whatever. Puts in something else, a different blessing. Mavarch aleihim.
Piece of donut.
Into the milk? Maybe.
Chocolate Cheerios.
Yeah, chocolate Cheerios into the milk could be. Then he just makes the bracha on the drink. The makal or toffel and the solid food becomes secondary. So when the food is the main thing, the drink becomes secondary. When the drink is the main thing, the food becomes secondary. Now, then kavanosel shneim, he wanted to have them both. He likes to have his cereal, and then he likes to have half a bowl of milk left after he finishes his cereal, and drinks the flavored milk. So if they're the same bracha, there's no problem, right? That's why we got in brackets, and the blessing's not the same. So now what do you do? So what you do is like this. First, you make a bracha on the solid food, and you eat a little piece. And then you make a bracha on the broth or the milk, and you have a little piece of that. And in this case, you don't go after the majority. Now, even the food is type of grain. It's mazinus like a Cheerios type cereal, right? But you're really planning to have the whole thing of milk afterwards, half a bowl of milk. It's not considered the primary, the main food in this case, because you're planning having both. And a food that was cooked in milk or something in a broth. So we mentioned that earlier. So we had a whole discussion whether we also eat the broth or it's just for the food, and we, Okay. Now we're going to discuss another type. Yeah. David.
I remember reading somewhere that for a child, the parent the parent's kavana is to get the milk into the child. So it depends on the child's kavana or also the parent's kavana.
It's whoever's eating it. Um, you know, so it's whoever's eating it. You know, the child, we might say, doesn't have any kavanah because the child doesn't really have halachic intent. But you miss someone else making. You know, another example would be, let's say, it was mazonis cereal, and he put sugar, which is shahakal. You know, it's you don't make a separate bracha on the cereal. It just becomes on the sugar, just becomes nullified.
The intention is not to get the sugar necessarily, but the parent's intention is to get the milk into the child. So he's using
Yeah.
the cereal to accomplish that.
The child is really making brachas out of chinuch. You know, a child doesn't have an obligation to do mitzvahs himself. So the chinuch for him is not what someone else intends. The chinuch for him is what he would intend. So it would make the main bracha. But actually, just before we move on, just discussing that, we spoke about the 5 grains, different things. So another example would be if you have kneidlach, right? You have matzah balls in your soup. So matzah balls are mazonis. So so if it's Shabbos, does make a difference because you made hamotzi already. You know, the whole thing's a meal. But let's say you just had a soup with kneidlach. So you need to make mazonis on the matzah balls, and then you make a shehakol on the liquid, whatever. Unless you only want to eat matzah balls. Okay, and there's a little bit of liquid because you cooked it in. Then you're just gonna make a mazonis. You know, it's that's so we have it. Okay,
Well,
so
and if
number
it's
7,
vegetable soup with matzo ball, you would make mizonos and then adama.
dama, and then potentially shahakal. Depends how thick the soup is. So I can have get a lot of brachas in there. Trying to go for your 100 brachas a day. The next thing I'm going to discuss is, let's say, different spices. So what do you do? What do you do with that? So it spices will have in halakha with 2 different types. There are certain things you eat to add flavor, and then there's certain things you eat to counteract the flavor. So sometimes you put in sugar because you want the flavor, and sometimes you put it in because the thing you have is bitter, and you just need to tone down the bitterness. So it can sometimes make a difference. But just to be aware, there's 2 different types of what we'll loosely call spices. Number 7. You have ground spices that were mixed into sugar. Now, these spices are considered the primary food. And you make the appropriate blessing on them. Let's say you had mint. So then it's you're gonna make hadam or egois mishkat, nutmeg, spray priya eitz, Simmerint and cinnamon, spray priya dama, okay, on zambil, ginger, spray priya dama. So you have these things, even though you put sugar in it. The main thing is the the spice, the ginger or the cinnamon. Um,
Now, this is all, you're not talking about spice like you're putting on meat a little bit of something. You're talking about something where the dish itself is a
yeah.
spiced
So yeah, so you're
something.
eating, yeah, so you're eating, um, yeah. I mean, we don't normally eat these things straight, so I'm not quite sure of,
Right.
but it's presuming you're eating it straight. I mean, it's
Oh, floury
s-
onion. Oh, no, onion's not a spice.
yeah, no, but he would be, I guess, talking about ginger. I mean, I guess
Right.
you sugared it. You know what they call
Yeah.
like toffee type. I mean, so even though, and you could even potentially have more sugar than ginger,
Yeah.
but
Pineapple.
the
They do the
ginger is
same
going to
thing.
have the main flavor, so it's going to be the main thing. Guess that's why he gave examples of nutmeg and cinnamon, because they're the kinds of things that you could make some type of, I guess, like a candy type thing out of. Um, right. Just want to go back to winter folks. So I just wanted to, I meant to mention it, and it slipped my mind for a moment. Spreads, right? Even if the spread is really what you want to eat, the bread or cracker is always going to be considered the primary food. Um, so
Well, it's the table. It's what's holding the.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different to what we said when a person has maybe a crack or something to because he's drinking, just to calm down the strength of the drink or something like that. Because he actually eating it together, eating the spread and the thing together, so it's always going to be uh, secondary. All right, number 8. Hashoisa shemen zayis kamoshu. Okay, so we actually finished that sort of um, discussion of the primary. Well, we're going to get in from a different angle. So, any questions on that before we go on? We got it clear. Oh, Hashem. Okay, so someone was drinking olive oil as is, right? So it's not mixed. Einim avarach alav klal. He doesn't make a bracha on all at all. Mipneshu mazik loy, because it's harmful. You just start drinking cups of olive oil. It's not very good for you. But if he mixed it with other things, hu toffel, then generally it's considered secondary.
Secondary.
Mavarach rakal ikka, and he makes the blessing on the main food. However, im yesh michush, if he has a certain type of a sickness, an ailment, whatever it is, shehu sarach es shemen l'rafua, and he needs to drink a little bit of olive oil to cure him. It's his medicine. And it's just so the olive oil doesn't damage him, he mixes in a little something with it. Since his main intention is the olive oil, even if it ends up being the minority of the mixture, he makes the olive oil's blessing, which is borei pri ha'etz. And the other ingredients in his mixture that he's drinking are exempt with that bracha. That's if you're drinking it as for medicinal. Bimhod same, but if he was thirsty, and the main intention of drinking this mixture is to quench his thirst. And once he's drinking it already, he poured in a bit of olive oil to help his medicine. But he was drinking because he was thirsty. It's like sometimes people they add different things into their drinks for vitamins or a supplement or something. But the intention was to drink. Then mavarach rak al mashka. Now he only makes the bracha that he would have made on the regular drink, which is shahakal. The same applies if he added to a drink, egois, mushkat, or simmering, or ingaba, he added nutmeg, or cinnamon, or ginger. The zinach kavana, we follow the intention. So if his intention was to drink ginger, so that'll be one thing. But if his intention, he just wanted to flavor his milkshake or whatever he's having, then it's just a bracha on the shahakal. Okay. So we'll finish here for today. So this time, not only on Sunday, so I wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos. But since we don't have next Sunday, because Sunday night Shavuos, wish everyone a wonderful Yom Tov. And the blessing, you should have a Kabbalah Satayah, you should receive the Torah of Simcha Pnimius with joy, and should be internalized, and should be uplifting and meaningful Yom Tov.
Amen.
Thank you,
And to
Rabbi.
you, Rebbe. Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
Rabbi.
welcome. Take care.